Welcome to another episode of the Woman Up podcast, a place where we entertain, educate, and elevate women on this journey we call life. And on this week's episode, I have the amazing Amy White with me. Amy, how are you?
Hi, happy to be here. Happy to be filming a podcast
Yeah.
because I've done so many over Zoom that it's nice to actually be in person and have a chat with you.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yeah. And we've connected like for a few times across the years, haven't we? And then, I saw your podcast and was like, oh, I want to be on that. So, yeah, here I am.
I love that. Yeah. And I appreciate you coming down because you've come from quite far, right?
Yeah, I've come from Margate. But so I'm from London, as we were just having that chat. So I'm in London now and then, but I'm really happy just to like have an excuse to come into London now and then. You know, we're going for dinner after. We've got obviously our friend coming to join us, our mutual friend. So it's nice to kind of like tie them in. It's nice to keep my like toes in London as well. Keep a few fingers in London pies.
Yeah, I think also recording in person means I'm like making new friends as well. So
yeah, exactly. That's it. We've like combined it with a little social as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know you, let's start with who you are and what you do.
So I'm Amy and I'm a woman's sexuality expert, so female sexuality expert. So my work is around supporting women in connecting authentically to their sexuality. This includes understanding their pleasure and orgasm, but also being able to like gaining awareness around maybe their conditioned beliefs and stories that they're carrying around sex that may be blocking them from connecting to themselves as a sexual being because of their upbringing and their programming. So it's a lot of sort of breaking down like myths and societal norms around sex that aren't serving the individual and women as a whole, and then like uplifting, normalizing and empowering what they do want their sexuality and pleasure to be like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before we delve into all of that, what were you doing before this? Have you always done this?
No. So I was a probation officer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I studied law, and then when I was studying law, I got really into like the human rights aspect. I remember vividly I found a lot of law very boring, but I was very academically minded, so I could really grasp concepts and theories and argue different points, which all of this really serves me well for what I do now. You just have to know how to draw the lines. But I went on so I was really interested in like prisons and how like the government, these sort of like men in power, power dynamics, just decide what the laws are. And then those who breach them have to sort of surrender to whatever punishment is the kind of like sign of the times. I just found it fascinating. Like this, I find humans fascinating.
Yeah.
Like how we like decide to like live civilized lives. And I went on to then study human rights. So I was really interested in prison systems.
Oh, wow.
And then I became a probation officer. So it was about working with those who'd been convicted of crimes, and I ended up just the kind of departments that I worked in. I worked in a prison as well. I worked with high risk offenders, so those who'd committed really serious crimes, a lot of like sex crimes as well. So it gave me a real insight into like the real darkness and shadow and distortion of humanity, and a real understanding of humanness as well, like and it really feeds into what I do, because although I can be very opinionated, I actually don't dehumanize anyone.
Yeah.
Because I just think we're all capable of doing some really fucking dark things. We're all capable. Had our lives just taken a slightly different turn, this is my belief, that it's our environment that causes us to behave in certain ways.
Okay.
Had we just like our life taken one sharp turn in the opposite direction, we could go down the same route as other people. And I think what that really enables me to see is like, or give space to people, is clients and people coming and sharing things that they may have done or experienced, and like there's nothing you can say to me that is going to make me judge you. And I think, with the topic of sex, there's so much shame around it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, You know, I get clients and they're like, I feel really bad because, and I'm like, girl, this is nothing. Like, you don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
That you come on, like, and it's great because I could just like normalize things. I'm like, that's not a big deal.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
as
yeah.
in, how you feel is valid, but there's no need to feel shame about that. That's like totally fine.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I absolutely didn't know about the probation
Oh,
officer thing. How
really?
long were you doing that?
Yeah, I like in various different roles from like nearly 10 years. Like
Wow.
maybe like seven years. Yeah, in various sort of different roles because I kind of like left and I did some contract work as well. So yeah, I did some really interesting things. I was doing some interventions for female offenders at one point, like delivering a program that was based on more like positive psychology and like, sense of self and self-worth, which I love. I still have such a passion for it. I have so many theories and ideas around how to reduce sexual harm, like and sexual deviance by having safe spaces for them to talk about it. Some of these things do exist.
Yeah.
In the criminal justice system, there are programs and things, but I think that there are more preventative measures that we could use. Collectively as a society, we're really behind. Like, it's not acceptable. We like make monsters of people before they have space to understand and heal and do the work that would actually stop the harm from happening. Yeah, I could really go deep into that, but it feels like somewhere along the line I will bridge the two. Yeah, and bring the two pieces of work together. I just need to find my way.
Did you enjoy that job that you were doing?
Very much so. I was very passionate about it. And I just, as I said, I find it so interesting. I find human behavior so interesting. I could just I loved it. And I was always watching like prison documentaries and like reading books and everything about it. But the actual role in itself was super stressful and the culture was really toxic and like the work environment wasn't healthy. There were some times where I had was in good teams but it was just very much, it just became a bit of a tick box exercise and you couldn't really get any proper work done with anyone because you were just sort of fighting fires, really, not enough staff, not enough interventions, not enough money. It's not a desirable like department or area for politicians. Like, the public don't care about people who commit crimes. Like, the public sort of opinion is throw them away and lock away the key. That's still our kind of, you can see it in the newspapers and the way that they report and things like that. So it's not, no government that wants to get voted in is gonna bring through legislation or policies that support the rehabilitation of criminals because nobody wants to vote for that. It's just not a very favourable area, which is so unfortunate because it would, like, punishment does not stop the harm from happening. We know that. It's just so obvious. Like, it's so evidence-based that punishment does not stop people from offending,
I feel like this is just like a whole podcast episode in itself, like this whole topic.
But
what made you transition from that then to what you do now?
So that's pretty much like part of how this all started because it wasn't intentional. What happened is in 2016, my mum passed away and she'd been ill, but it was a shock. Like, we didn't know that she was that ill, and she sort of took a turn one night and we went to A&E and she passed away. What had happened, because she had cancer, so that's how she'd been ill, and her cancer had grown like by a millimeter and perforate her bowel. So she, is it sepsis? So she, like, and that just was like quite instant, like, or developed over like 2 hours or so. So that being like, it was a shock, as in like, it just like my world sort of suddenly turned on its head overnight. And I went back to work. So I was working in Hackney, actually, in probation.
Wow.
And yeah, and the thing is, I went back, like, had time off and like 3 weeks, which is nothing really. And I went back to just like a caseload of 40, and just like carry on again. And
Yeah.
I just couldn't. And like the subject matter that I was working with was so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was dealing with other people coming in where their mums had died, and I was dealing with like challenging behaviors, and I was just so broken and fragile. I remember just feeling so anxious,
Mm-hmm.
like almost like if you was to just drop a feather on my shoulder, I would have collapsed.
Yeah.
Like just like so fragile, but just holding it all together because there was not really any space to kind of fall apart. I did actually fall apart a few times in the office, and I'd actually had a trip to India booked. What um before my mum passed,
Mm-hmm.
and then it came about a month after my mum passing. I decided to still go. Why would I not? Although it was kind of a bit of a question back then as well. I remember just kind of like the world I was in and the lifestyle. It was kind of like grief was sort of looked upon as like, if you want time off, you should be sort of like crying in
Mm.
bed, not like taking a holiday.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like all you really need in those moments. Well, you need what you need, you
Yeah.
know, and you just do what you do. But anyway, so I went to India for 3 weeks on this holiday. It wasn't a particularly spiritual experience. We were just sort of traveling around, and we were kind of like looking for like yogas and yoga classes and temples and whatever.
Yeah. Did you go by yourself?
No, I went with a friend.
Okay.
And it was really, really, I mean, something was activated in me, because then I came back feeling like I had a renewed sense of life in me that soon got like just blotted out being back at work and back in that environment.
Mm.
And so I remember just thinking, do you know what, I'm gonna leave, like I'm gonna save up for the rest of the year, and I'm just gonna leave and get a one-way ticket to India. So I did that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did that. And yeah, when I was in India, I'd already been sort of, I guess, started exploring like healing, you know, as in like going to yoga classes. I'd already been dabbling in meditation, and I'd like taken my Reiki training. So there was already this sort of spiritual opening that I had been having. Um, which is another podcast in itself, because that was triggered by quite a catalytic event. However, then my mum's passing triggered me into even more kind of like, I guess on some level, it's like when someone you're so close to passes away,
Mm.
and you believe that they go into the spirit world, you then want to be closer to the spirit world,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah,
So
that makes
I was
sense.
just doing everything like crystals, you know, psychics, like I just, not even necessarily seeking my mum, but just being close to that world, you know? Like that kind of like, if like the ethers, the kind of non-material energetics. So I was just throwing myself in that, and I was just sort of like, I just want to get to India and go deeper into that. So I did. I did a 300-hour meditation teacher training while I was
Wow.
there. Yeah, and that was just sort of like morning, noon, and night. It was amazing. It wasn't like we were learning different types of meditation,
Yeah.
and there was teachings and stuff. It wasn't like a silent,
Okay.
you know, kind of thing. It was really, really cool. Um, and but I still remember being quite like, oh, I don't know, still not really, I don't know. I felt like quite disconnected still from like the practices and the experience. I did sound healing training while I was there. I traveled all over. Yeah, I was really like diving in, I suppose. But still feeling like really lost. Um and I had this idea that I wanted to come back and start, you know, offering meditations and yogas and things.
Mm.
But I suppose internally I was still like, well, this isn't really, this is having an effect on me. I'm not really feeling like I still feel really lost. I
Mm.
still feel very full of grief. And I remember being at a yoga school in Goa, and I'd followed a friend that I'd met down there, because I felt so lost, and I was like, I don't really know where else to go. And I don't know if you've ever felt that, like, such gripping anxiety in your body and like grief that you just sort of like need someone else to direct you somewhere, that you can't even really make choices. Anyway, so I was in this yoga school, and it was really beautiful. It was quite Western, and I remember kind of missing elements of the meditation training, like the morning puja and like the kind of rituals and stuff that we were doing, that felt like more steeped in the culture and like the structure of it as well. And I remember just and Goa was getting really hot, and I remember just having like loads of bites, and so when my insides were feeling deeply uncomfortable, like was internally just like in this like horrid space, my external felt uncomfortable. I was just like kind of like wanting to get out of my skin, kind of thing is the best way to describe it. But then I was like, I was sort of like I was like, I maybe want to go home. I need to kind of like be held, like, I guess wanted to be mothered, you know? In Mama India, as they call her. And I remember saying to my friend, I kind of want to go, like, I don't know what I'm doing here anymore, but I'm not quite ready to go home because I haven't found why I came here, which is really cliche, but it was actually really true for my circumstances. So she said, why don't you do a yoga teacher training, because you want to do all these practices and blah 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 blah. I know you don't want to be a yoga teacher, but it will add to your what you already want to do, and it will also give you the structure that you desire. And you'll just go home, you know, it'll be another month, and you'll just go home with some more skills. You would have got that structure, and then, you know, you might be in a different headspace. So I was like, okay, how do I find this yoga school? And she was like, go on the Yoga Alliance website. And I was like, fine. And I was like, right, I want to go back to Rishikesh because that's where I felt the most sort of safe and grounded. And so I just looked for yoga schools in Rishikesh, and the first one that came up was like best yoga school in the world or something like that. Which the marketing was not that great. Anyway, I clicked on it, and they were like, I must admit, in this state that I was in, I was drawn to air conditioning, swimming pool. Okay. I was just like, yeah, okay, I'll go there. And I got there. So I think I messaged them, and they were like, it starts on Monday. It was like a few days later. They were like, we've got one deluxe room available. It was like all my savings I had left. I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's just see what this brings. And then I got there, and it was a Kundalini Tantra yoga teacher training. Okay. And I never knew that. And it was like, I honestly felt like I was at home. And
just to interrupt you, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, do you want to explain?
Yeah, I'll try. How do I encapsulate it? It's, I guess the best way to describe it was, I mean, on a really practical level, Kundalini yoga is the inclusion of Kriya practices in your yoga, which are like specific breath combinations of breath, sound, and movement to create to kind of like expand your consciousness, I suppose. Like there's an intelligence to them. They're kind of like, what's the word? Somebody described it as like a technology for enlightenment.
Okay.
I mean, to paint a picture, it was like everyone's wearing white.
Okay.
I have to laugh. It's a little bit culty, but it's fine. I have been a bit culty in my time, but everyone's wearing white. There's a guru. He's Anand. He's an Indian man who was the main teacher of this school. Everyone's sort of like surrounded around him, and he's sort of chanting and stuff, and people are having these like full body experiences. One thing to say, with this school, Kundalini Tantra is what is known as white Tantra. So it's not, whilst we may talk about sexual energy as the energy in our body, it's not about sex. So yeah, I did go on to that. But so Kundalini is like our life force energy, this life force energy that is said to be dormant at the base of the spine. The imagery is like a coiled up snake. And through these practices, through the Kundalini technology, you awaken this snake, you awaken this energy, and it starts to uncoil and travel up your spine, on the way clearing out your chakras and opening them up and activating them, but like taking you through the lessons and the healing for each one.
Okay.
So I've gone into this place and I'm instantly like just like wowed. There's just something about it. There's certain things that had happened on that trip. Like I'd heard about Kundalini, I'd seen someone have a Kundalini experience. Like some of the books that we were told to read on the reading list was like by like a speaker that I'd seen at this yoga festival, which kind of makes sense. But for me, I was like, oh my God, everything's just come together in this one place. And I had this experience of Kundalini waking up. Like I could feel it in my body. I would have these like really euphoric moments and this like really aha moments and this awareness. And I just felt like I was having this rapid awakening meaning just like realization upon realization upon realization, and this like energy in my body that felt like oh my God, like just amazing, like ecstasy. It was just wild in the best possible way.
Yeah.
And in that, because the Kundalini is closest to your sexual energy, I had a lot of sexual energy wake up in me.
Okay.
Which was amazing. And I was just like, wow, I'm just like full of all this energy and this like horniness. And then, and it felt all like really expansive and liberating. And then when I would like go to my room to like explore this sexual energy, I would realize it felt like then became like this sort of like stuck thing. I realized also like my patterns around it and my like, I realized like the kind of like fantasies I would need to go into to kind of like, it was just this really stark contrast between this like, wow, this really open sexual energy when I'm just like standing at the foot of the Himalayas, like with my feet dangling in the Ganga River, and then like going to my room and being like, oh, suddenly I'm remembering that I'm just watching all this sordid porn and like don't actually know how to, you know, feel that expansive with my own body. So it really kind of held this massive mirror up to my relationship to sex. And just for anyone listening, when I said that, like sordid porn, I don't judge people that watch porn. Like we could do a whole podcast on that, but I'm not limiting the conversation to that. It was just how I felt at that time.
Yeah.
But I just realized that there was like, wow, I've had access to this big amount of energy, yet the only way that I know how to be with it or work with it feels very unlike what I'm doing here. And then I came home after this. I was just ready to come home. And I just noticed some of like my relationship patterns as well. I started just sort of like, you know, chasing with all this sexual energy, just like chasing inappropriate, unavailable men. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go celibate. And I decided to go celibate for 9 months. And so when I came back as well, along this time, I started to put on like women's circles and I started to do like teach meditation and yoga and like my Kundalini yoga. I wasn't really talking about sex or anything like that. And I went celibate for a year. It ended up being a year. I went 9 months, but it became involuntarily 12 months. But I spent that time like learning how to be with this energy. So learn it like, because I realized like when I would then be with this energy, I would like tense up, I would like stop breathing, I would like go into fantasy, and it just became like this really disembodied experience. I think that's the best way to describe it. I was like, oh, when I actually try to masturbate and have an orgasm, I become completely disembodied. I didn't even realize I was doing that. And I was like, how is it? Yeah. So I was like, I want to feel that open and expansiveness. I want to bring that in to actually having an orgasm. So I just went on this like year-long journey with my body and myself of just like exploring that and like bringing breath practices in and like using self-touch and massage, just all this stuff. I was just like on this, like I was just like a kid in a playground with it.
Hey ladies, thanks for joining us here on another episode of the Woman Up podcast. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to take a moment to say, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please follow the channel and leave us a review. It really, really helps with our reach. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any episodes in the future. If you're feeling especially inspired, please feel free to leave us a comment or share the episode on your socials. I personally read all comments, and every share has a massive effect on our growth, so it really means the world to us. Thanks in advance, we appreciate you, and let's get back to the episode.
And
I was going to say, because so you went celibate, but does that mean with no partner?
Oh yeah, no, just with no one else but
Yeah,
myself.
but yourself,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And because I just wanted to learn how to like really be in this expansiveness in my own body. And then it was about a year, like pretty like almost the exact year, when I went to a tantric like day festival in London at one of the tantra schools in London, and met my first like tantric lover, my first tantric partner. Broke the celibacy, and he he really taught me. He was like really quite orthodox. If you can have an orthodox tantric guy, you definitely can. And so he was like really taught me how to like. Then I started exploring this sort of like not orgasming, but like building the energy and like moving it through the chakras. And it was really beautiful, really expansive. And from that experience, I was like, wow, like there's no going back from here for me, for life. Like something's happened that I need to share with the world that is so amazing. And like that, this is what I need to do now. This is just what I need to do. Like, women need to be exploring sex. Women need to feel comfortable exploring sex. And women need to feel shame-free about exploring. And I just started sharing on my socials from what I was already doing. And it just felt like, I was like, this is what I'm doing now. And it just evolved like from that. And I just dove so deeply in on my personal journey into it. And then I just started to, share it, and that it just built and developed from there.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It sounds like such a journey that you went through as well.
Such a journey, and there's so many chapters I haven't included.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
We need like a separate podcast episode for each chapter.
I know, but that's essentially like the beginning moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was it like when you started working with women? Like, where did you start? Like, I know you have different courses and different things available, but where did that journey start?
So I suppose it was the women. I was already holding women's circles, and bringing in like my meditation, my Kundalini practices, and then I started bringing in like feminine energy work. So like working with like the energies of the masculine and feminine, which is what I did learn on my Kundalini Tantra training. And then I started just teaching about this sort of self-pleasure practice and speaking about sexuality and sensuality, and that being like such a important part of our humanness, and really linking it to like our life force and our creativity. And I studied tantric body work as well, which I don't use now. Like it's a modality that I would use on other people's bodies, but the principles and the practices I guide other women to use on their bodies, just as like a taster, and to just go deep with themselves, which I was doing with myself. So the work, it began with like group stuff, and then I started taking on clients one-to-one, because they were like, oh, I want to, I need to go deeper. I want to share what's been going on for me and get some support. And then I was like, wow, I need more. Like I need to like really like skill up some more. And so I did my training with psychosexual somatics therapy.
Okay.
To give me more understanding of like somatic work and how to move things through the body. I've also trained around trauma, so I can help support women with trauma in the body as well, and trauma around sex and pleasure. So it's really been like building blocks and layers, and I've just sort of kept developing and sharing as I've gone along, and it's just deepened. My journey's just deepened, and my sort of skills have deepened as I've gone
Yeah.
along the journey.
What kind of challenges do you think women are facing at the moment in in regards to their sexuality?
I believe what I see is this idea that they've got like no desire for sex, or like low libido, low sex drive, however you want to describe it. And whenever a woman comes to me and they tell me like I've just got no interest in sex, my first question is like, really, I want to know, like, step by step, what is the sex that you're having that you don't enjoy? Because a lot of my work is explaining, or like really showing women that there is another way of doing sex, and it's often just the kind of sex that's available to us that we don't want. And until we know another way, of course, and when you understand the different way, of course you don't want that kind of sex. And the sex I mean is often what we've seen through porn, but just on films and media. And it's this idea that, you lock eyes, suddenly this desire, this uncontrollable desire arises in the body. Everyone strips off, they kiss passionately, suddenly being penetrated. Oh my God, you climax together, you just tumble down, like so satisfied. And I'm like, I just balk at those like expressions. It can happen. It does happen. But like, women need time to warm up. They need emotional connection. They need to feel safe. Like, and there's nuances to all these things, which I unpack, which is like my favorite thing to do, because I say we need to feel safe. That doesn't mean we don't like risky scenarios. That can like, this isn't like, safety doesn't mean boring. Like, you can dive into all your fantasies and all your like kinks and quirks, but you need to feel like soft in your body. So there needs to be like a safety and openness in your body to be in that place. There's just so much in it, which is great, because if you come and say you don't feel like you have a high sex drive, or that an interest in sex, there is so much that I can work with you on to show you that there may be an inroad for you, where you are actually a sexual being and you do have a sex drive.
Are there a lot of women saying that they aren't interested in sex?
Yeah, or they're just like not up for it with their partners, or their partner seems to be more up for it than them, or they're having it and it's not that great, and they're like, oh, they're not that satisfied. It's like they don't really get it. Like, what's the big deal? Some women would just rather do it themselves. So that's a big thing that I come across.
That's interesting, because I feel like, I don't know, like my experience is that everyone else was like having a really exciting sex life, and then I was just like really shy and like reserved in that area. So I don't know, like I don't have this image of like loads of women not having sex.
I think that's the thing. Another thing women think is that they're the only ones. And they feel so much shame about it. They're like, oh, because shame is like, there's something wrong with me. And so they come because they're like, there's something wrong with me. I'm like, there isn't. The model that you've been given, that women have been given, there's everything wrong with that. We're like, it's just not interesting. It's like, like women's bodies being penetrated before you're ready or turned on is not enjoyable.
No, it's not.
So
not
if you're like, you've got someone who just wants to get inside you and you're like, I'm not ready, you're just going to be constantly keeping them at arm's length, being like, oh God, how do I manage this again? You know, and eventually in a long-term relationship, you just be like, I can't be bothered to do this.
I also grew up on Sex and the City as well. It's one of my favorite series. But when I watch it back, sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, guys, like this is not.
It's so interesting watching it back. I actually watched it in 2020. Like, went through, obviously we're in lockdown, went like series to series. In some ways, they're so ahead of their time. I remember they did like some goddess dancing, and I was like, oh, okay.
I do remember that.
And they went to a hand job class, didn't they?
Tantric,
and one of them got squirted on. Sam was, I don't know who it was.
Miranda.
Oh, Miranda. But I felt like they did kind of, I mean, it was so profound for women, they did so, I think it did so much to start the conversation. but it did also sort of portray women having sex like men, you know, and almost sort of void of this, void of the reality of how, I want to say, so void of the like reality of how women are carrying in their bodies, which is where we have sex, the cultural stories that being a sexual being is somehow wrong. And on the, you know, or dangerous, or makes you a slut and makes you less worthy.
Yeah.
Right. So we're carrying a lot of, you know, these stories like they embed in us, like they're like programming that we carry, and then, you know, and then we're expected to be like Sex and the City, super liberal beings, and we're like, well, why does my body not like respond to this? And it's like, because your body is subconsciously still like, I don't think I'm that safe being a sexual being in this world. And it's that's still true in this, you know, you only have to look around to see, like, you know, the media, it has changed somewhat, but they still slut shame women massively. You know, they degrade women sexually. You know, we see that all the time, and we see the sexual harm that is carried out against women, and we see the lack of justice around like sexual assaults and things that women experience. And so there are these like undercurrents in us where it's like women are judged and shamed for being sexual, and men are celebrated. So no wonder they're just like, yeah, let's just fuck, let me just get my pleasure on, because it's like the whole world is conspiring to support you in that. But we're like, oh, I kind of want to feel that, but it's like, can I, is it safe, am I going to be judged, you know? And they're things that we carry.
Let's talk about the self-pleasure piece, because I know that's like a big thing for you.
Yeah.
Firstly, what is self-pleasure? Like, what does that mean for you?
So self-pleasure is a term that essentially is a different term for masturbation, because it just has different associations. So masturbation just comes with some associations that maybe people find a bit off-putting, maybe inaccessible. For me, the shift to the term self-pleasure is something that feels more pleasure-focused rather than goal-focused or orgasm-focused. It allows us to reclaim something for ourselves, I think, as women. Like it's for self, you know, like self-pleasure. And from how I teach self-pleasure as opposed to masturbation is like an exploration of your own body and your own pleasure for your own well-being and for your own connection to your sexuality, connection to self, ways to feel good, ways to like soothe your nervous system, ways to relieve stress. Like it has so many benefits to it. And I think when we just think masturbation, it's like, oh, I'm just getting myself off.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it can come with a lot of shame. And then, you know, people could feel a lot of shame around it. When we think about like self-pleasure, it's like, it's kind of like a gift to yourself. It's like an act of self-care, act of self-love. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I've wrote about this so much over the years and for different like articles and things just around, yeah, like we have this body that's capable of experiencing pleasure, that releases like serotonin and endorphins and, you know, like oxytocin and like all these beautiful chemicals to alleviate stress, to like create regulated nervous systems, to like make us feel more connected. But yet we don't do it.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you have like, you know, people talk about like a self-care routine.
Yeah.
Do you have like a self-pleasure practice that is like a regular thing in your life?
Yeah. And you know, I must admit, sometimes I'm more frequent at it than others. But for me, environment is everything. Like just small things like having a tidy space, you know, setting, you know, lighting a candle or some incense, or, you know, like igniting the senses. You know, senses is sensuality, you know. And also these things, we have a brain that works by association. You know, if you have been working all day at home, like on your bed, sometimes I'm guilty of that, and you've got all these reports and stuff, especially if your work's stressful, you're hardly going to look at it and be like, oh, this is a place I can really soften into and like experience my pleasure. You know, so just like shove them away, straighten your bed up a bit, like, you know, put some candles on, put some music on. Like work out what sets you in the mood, what like allows you to feel relaxed, and it could, even before that, it could be like have a bath, change out the clothes that you're wearing, put something on that feels like sensual, and that doesn't have to mean lacy underwear. It could be like your soft cotton pajamas, or whatever it is for you. And then get down, like what I always say as well is like, follow the pleasure and not the orgasm, and include your whole body, so we're so conditioned also just to go straight for the genitals, rub here, pull there, whatever, and it often, that doesn't even feel that great until you bring about the energy, and then it does. But like, what about like actually just following touch on your body that feels good from the off, exploring, like stroking your body and like massaging your own shoulders and your legs and your feet, and like really just giving yourself that time and space, and then coming to massage your breasts, and then you like creating this really slow, like self-touch practice that feels good, that doesn't feel like a means to an end. And then, even if you feel like it, coming to the genitals and starting to explore that sensation, and then building up that pleasure, building up the sensation, and if an orgasm's there, have an orgasm, but also just enjoying being with your body in an intimate way.
I did an interview years ago with a lady who was a tantric. I don't know what her actual title was now, but it was about tantric. And she said that when she masturbates, she like you said, candle, everything, and we're talking like an hour to 2 hours. Where she'll like massage, she'll like play with her toys, sometimes like bite them, or like really get into it. And I remember saying to her, firstly, like at the time I was like, but who has that kind of time? And then also I kind of felt like, for me, I would be like really embarrassed, like even if there's no one around, because I kind of feel like I'm kind of being a bit self-indulgent, and like there's no one with me, so I don't get that urge to like massage myself or do anything like that. Do you think that's a common thought?
Very common. And that's why I do talk a lot about pleasure, but when you actually work with me, you'd probably be surprised at how self-pleasure is probably like one fraction of what we do, because what we need to do is like work on all those layers that are in the way of pleasure as well. And like when you do start to sort of explore pleasure, it will show you everything that is in the way as well. And that is the embarrassment and discomfort, and that will come up in sex with another as well. If we're not even, and I say, like, it's really common to like not be that comfortable even just being sexual with ourselves.
Exactly.
But if we can kind of work with that and move through that and like ease through those layers, the more you kind of become comfortable with yourself in that way, like not only are you then able to experience pleasure and maybe be more confident in the bedroom with a partner, but can you imagine in like life, if you've got this huge part of you, right, sex, that is literally how you're made. Like you literally, we come into this existence through sex, through an orgasm, through ejaculation. Yet we feel deeply uncomfortable about this part of ourselves. Can you imagine like how much of us that takes away? Like how much confidence or like sense of, like how it impacts our sense of self. Maybe not even on the logical conscious level, but subconsciously, like how we might be carrying ourselves, like feeling like, oh my God, I've got this big secret that I'm actually a sexual being. Locked away. And imagine if you just start to unlock that and be like, I'm a sexual being. I like orgasms. I like pleasure. But, sometimes I don't feel like it. And, like just normalizing that and like embracing it. You just feel much more, I don't know. I think more like open. There's much more openness to everything in life when you kind of embrace that.
That's what I was going to ask you as well, because I think some of our audience I've had with other episodes will ask, what is the point? Like, why is this important? Actually, before I go into that, I want to read like one of your some of your testimonials from your website. I mean, we should probably go into the wands and the yoni eggs first, because some of these testimonials refer to that.
Oh yeah, I'm not selling them anymore, but I would still love to. I know.
So one of the testimonials says, I used the rose quartz wand last night and my productivity is through the roof. I can't remember the last time I felt this focused and clear.
Yeah.
So back to the original question is like, what is the point? Like, how does that side affect the rest of your life? Because when I read that, I was like, what? More productive? Like, what do you mean?
I mean, there's so many ways I can angle this, but I guess the one thing that comes, have you ever had had an after sex glow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you feel like you could you feel confident, you feel relaxed, you feel like you can take on the world.
Yeah.
That is what you can give yourself through self-pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And we often don't get it from that like short, sort of like quick, like bring ourselves to orgasm. Oh God, did anyone know? I feel a bit embarrassed about that, you know. But if you kind of like really indulge and you're like, and I say to people like, bring through your sex goddess. And it sounds really woo-woo, but it's not. And you know, like if you go through the layers and the stages and the steps that I guide women through to like understand how we lock like our bigness and our confidence and our pleasure away, or we lock so much of our fullness away by hiding under the shame and like lack of like worthiness for pleasure and for being a sexual being. Like when you kind of embrace this sexual energy and like you fill yourself up with pleasure and this orgasmic energy, like when you've had when you're in when you're having an orgasm, like it's one of the most unique and like insanely amazing experiences, you know. And like to be able to kind of like feel that and then be like, right, I'm gonna now like write an article, or like I'm gonna start getting on with this project. And I actually teach how to manifest with our sexual energy, like
No
through
way.
self-pleasure.
That's
Yeah, so it's
amazing.
like called sex magic.
Yeah.
But it's also this idea of like filling yourself up with this energy, and instead of using it to orgasm or going to chase a partner, or a potential partner, like pouring it into your creative pursuits, like pouring it into, you know, like using that like buoyancy. You're buoyed up, right? You're energized. You're full of life force. They call it life force in like Tantra because it is the energy that gives us life. And so they say we can use it to feel more life and more alive.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have so many questions that I just feel like this is going to end up being like a really long episode, but
Maybe we'll have to do a part 2.
yeah, maybe. So in terms of that, like following on from that, what are some practices that you think, or rituals even, that women can use to reconnect to their sexuality?
Yeah. I think it's always good to sit down, you know, as a first point of call, and just journal about what messages you received around sex and what was your upbringing around sex like, right? And just bring in some awareness to some of the things that may have created a relationship in your body, like on the conscious level, but on the subconscious level, that may be kind of like holding you back, or maybe like limiting your experience of sex, or maybe creating some shame. Yeah, so really just starting to and kind of like break them down, you know, like, is this true? I'm going to give you the answer, no. It's not.
Yeah.
You know, sex is a really healthy, normal part of our existence that if we can navigate it maturely and, you know, with awareness, it can be a really empowering part of our lives.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to do anything. And this one thing that's really important in my work is like, I'm not selling sexuality to look a particular way. It's really open to how you want to be sexually, because the last thing we need is another blueprint. We literally been sold models of like what it means to be sexy and what it means to be sexual, that we constantly are like, oh, I got to be like this, I got to be like that. And it's like you get to explore what it is for you, you know. So yeah, really starting to do that. And I know that's not particularly going to bring about pleasure, but I think it's such an important part of the process. And then just really start to bring in some sensual practices. And when I say sensual, it's literally like what you can taste, what you can smell, what you can hear, what you can see, and what you can touch, right? And create these mini sort of like bite-sized practices of sensuality, like, you know, getting a piece of chocolate and like eating it really slowly and mindfully, and like see if you can feel the experience in your body. Because it's about like getting into your body a bit, right? Not just on that mind level, that tastes nice, like feel it tasting nice, you know? Same with like touch, like have maybe you might have like a velvet top that you wear, and like you can just run your hands over it a bit and be like, God, that feels really, really beautiful, or whatever it is that's specific to you. And then I would introduce self-touch rituals. I'm intentionally leaving like the genital touch out of the equation, because I think that there's so much to I think the default is to do that, and it's not always the way in to explore sexuality. If there's like resistance and shame and, you know, a disconnection from the body, it doesn't really matter if you go for your genitals. It's gonna feel disconnected, detached, maybe even create more shame stories. So it's like reconnecting to the sensuality of your experience through like taste, touch, smell, and build up to creating a practice where it's about an hour, and without expectation in that hour, just saying like an hour to yourself where you can create a beautiful environment to explore your body, explore your pleasure. You may even want to just like take a mirror and like look in between your legs, like look at your body, explore it, like see what's there, you know, get to know yourself in that way. Yeah, and I really resonate with the time thing, and is my favorite way to call myself out on this, whether I've got enough time, is to look at my phone and see my screen time for the day.
Yeah.
When I tell myself I don't have time, I'm like, I look at my screen time, like, I've got time.
Yeah. Or even just like, I don't know, for me, relaxing is like maybe on a Saturday night watching a movie or whatever.
Yeah.
A movie is what, like an hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yep,
So
exactly. And, you know, this thing about like we don't deserve it. It's like, well, you know, we think that we deserve a glass of wine or to buy a new dress, or, you know, there's so many ways that we give ourselves like short fix pleasure, pieces of pleasure, which I'm into. But like this, you know, it's not that it's selfish. That is just a story we carry that is rooted in the shame around sex.
Yeah.
You know?
So we've spoken a lot about like self, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's obviously a lot of women you work with that are in relationships. And I saw on your website you've got a free guide, which is a conscious lovemaking.
Yeah.
What is conscious lovemaking?
So interesting you say that. So consciousness, I suppose, is like when I say conscious lovemaking, it's like with awareness. So rather than going for our defaults and our sort of programmed ways of being, it's like being really mindful and aware of the interaction and the lovemaking that we're having. So bringing it into the light rather than just sort of, you know, so many couples, they just sort of have this groove and they just sort of like roll on top of each other and probably don't even talk about it. And it's just like, you know, make the right sounds, make the right movements, you know, probably have their experience, and then it's over. And then it's just like, da-da-da. So this is like bringing intention into it and like allowing space to really notice how you feel when you're interacting, and bringing in some different practices that allow you to connect a bit deeper or in different ways, creating space for conversation around it. It can really help just to like rewrite your sexual experience. Like I said, we tend to have this sort of default version of sex that even if it works, eventually can become boring, you know? And so it's good to bring in different ways. You know, when we think about like spicing up our sex life, I guess also the first thing that comes to mind is just like loads of toys and stuff. But sometimes like you need less. You need to just strip it back and just actually like connect, you know, like reconnect, like emotionally, intimately.
Yeah.
And that's what big part of what my work is about. Not that there's anything wrong with whips and chains and things, but and toys. But mine is about the emotional connection and reconnecting in that way.
Yeah. I also think to be emotionally connected, for me anyway, would then feel more comfortable to talk about if I wanted to use whips and chains or toys or whatever.
Absolutely.
Because if I'm not emotionally connected with you, I'm not going to bring that up.
No, and if you've never had a space to talk about sex, it's so hard to then just suddenly be like, oh, hey, do you mind if I just bring out my vibrator 5000 and my big dick dildo?
Yeah.
They're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. With you used to, so you don't sell them anymore, the Yoni eggs and the wands?
No, oh God, I'm so gutted. I closed up the shop. It just, like the cost of everything was increasing, and as much like I love the products, I'm obsessed with them, and I'm obsessed with what they do. But I just loved my like a whole aesthetic for the shop. It was just so beautiful, so much to it. But at the end of the day, as much as I love the products, I was still running a product-based business. Like and I did have someone working for me, but it was kind of that like I either go really big with it or I just can't continue. And I was like, my skills are like holding space.
Yeah.
So it was like I don't really know how to run a product-based business.
Yeah. Okay.
I was like, I'm gonna need a marketing team, and like so I was even like, I go do all of that. And then I was like, that might take me away from what I actually do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just became a bit of a, where am I going with this? Which I'm still quite gutted about. And I toy with reviving it.
I was going to say, do you use them?
Yes.
Okay, so one of them was the Yoni egg. What is a Yoni egg?
A Yoni egg is like a little egg-shaped crystal, and its origins, the practice is from Taoism, so like ancient Chinese traditions, and the egg is designed to be used internally inside the vagina. But there's a whole process that I teach around, like inserting it and then working with it. But essentially, it is not dissimilar to like Kegel practice and like love eggs.
Yeah.
However, we work more with like the energetics of the genitals and the pelvis with the egg, and with it being a crystal. But the egg is essentially like the tool, right, for you to connect deeper to the vagina and support you in awakening sensation. Because if you on a very practical level, if you've got the egg inside of you and you're using the right practices, sort of squeezing around it, you're starting to create that like massage technique inside of you, which can help to like awaken the waken the like nerve endings and the tissues inside of the vagina, and also create that sort of like neurological pathway connection between the inside of the vagina and the brain, right, to support the increase of pleasure and sensation. So the egg is designed to build a deeper connection to the yoni, the vagina, and awaken sensation and pleasure. And intensify orgasm, awaken life force.
Yeah.
But do you know what? I've really my trainings initially were so esoteric, like sort of very woo-woo, I feel like. And I've really started to like ground them into like, this is just really kind of also very like, like understandable science and normal. But so like the way I talk is just sort of brings it very down to the normal, but I swear to God, when you use the yoni egg and like when I guide journeys, you do have these sort of like quite spiritual experiences, like connecting to like different memories, and it's really beautiful. I really love that practice. I really love I love all the kind of journeying with like these sort of like sexual energy and this life force that we have available to us.
Yeah, because like I said, the testimonials, I wrote them out, and even one of them says, referring to the pleasure wand, I love my wand so much. I came with a smile on my face, magical moments of self-love, which I love. And then one of them said, oh my God, I'm never using a vibrator again. I had the most satisfying orgasm I've had in a long time. Wow, this is a whole new world. And I was just like, I've never seen any wand like that. I've only ever seen it on your page.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That's so funny, isn't it? I feel like my echo chamber, everybody's like, oh God, crystal wands, do me a favor.
Oh really?
Yeah.
No, that
but
definitely
do you know
wasn't
what?
me.
Sorry, you might have a question for me.
No, go.
I love the wands. Let me explain why. Because a part of my big journey of coming off, like, you know, when I was in India and then I was like, wow, I actually don't know how to like experience pleasure in a very like expansive way. I realized that I had become used to like an intense level of stimulation. That was actually quite uncomfortable until it brought about the orgasmic experience. It wasn't actually an enjoyable experience, but it kind of then did the like few seconds job. So I had to kind of like what I would call is like resensitize. And I don't mean that when I talk about resensitization, and I say this because it's something that comes up in on so people speak about on socials, your actual nerve endings aren't broken or anything. It's just your kind of like your neurological association, like your brain pathways that have this sort of need for intensity, right? So the reason I'm explaining this is so vibrators would use vibrators and have that kind of like intense feeling, and it would take a while to then bring about the orgasm. I came off them to kind of create to be able to bring my body to pleasure and orgasm with a more subtle sensation.
Yeah.
And it took a while for my body to kind of learn that. And this is why the crystal wands came in handy, because your fingers can only go so far and do so much. And like the firmness of it as well can help when you start to like contract your vagina around the wands and things, and sort of use them to like press up against the G-spot and stuff. Yeah, they can bring about lots of pleasure. But yeah, so they're like an alternative to vibrators. It's not that you shouldn't use vibrators or there's anything wrong, but if, like me, you have started, your body's become used to an intense level of stimulation to feel pleasure, that can also make it harder to feel pleasure with a partner unless you bring in the vibrator.
Yeah.
I also find also a vibrator on my clit means that like it's such a intent, like all my awareness will be at the vibrator because it's just like loud and strong, not necessarily loud, we've got quiet ones, that internally I wouldn't be feeling anything because it's like all your awareness and all the stimulation is there. It's such a strong stimulation. It's hard to notice any more subtle sensations. So like penetration just felt a bit like numb and nothing. So all these things have a place in, and that's what I mean, there's so much to explore, you know, if you, with the right tools, the right approaches, the right knowledge, there's so much more to be experienced.
Yeah. So what are your plans for the next 5 years or so then, with everything you're doing?
I really struggle with 5-year plans. What are my plans? So I'm teaching. I run a practitioner training to teach women to teach what I teach.
Yeah.
So I want to continue doing that and expanding the kind of school that's coming along with that. Yeah, this is such a good question because it's something that I need to think about myself. I want to bring a podcast out, and I just want to expand this stuff. I just want women to know this. I want, you know, us to be feeling empowered in our pleasure, having conversations. I want to reach more women. I want I want there to be like a bridge between, you know, our understanding around between men and women as well. I don't want it to feel like women are just going off and doing this. I want it to feel like this is something that we can all be involved in as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I normally finish my interviews with a game called 333, which is just 3 sets of 3 questions. The first 3 are would you rathers. So, would you rather Yoni egg or pleasure wand?
Yoni egg.
Ooh, that was quick.
Yeah.
Host a retreat or one-to-one coaching?
One-to-one coaching.
Oh,
I do. Yeah, for now, that's just my truth.
Yeah.
I would like someone else to create a retreat for me and I show up and teach.
Okay.
That's it. That's the thing.
Physical touch or words of affirmation?
Oh, words of affirmation.
Really? I thought you were going to say physical touch.
That will get into my pants.
Giving people tips now.
Yeah. Oh my God, just shower me with words of affirmation. I'll be like putty. Sometimes I ask for them from my partner. I'm like, tell me again. Tell me why you love me.
Oh, I love that.
3 ways, 3 reasons.
Okay, the next 3 are finish the sentence. One day I am going to.
Start a charity. I don't have any more to say. I don't know. I just see that. Yeah.
Okay. So you don't have an idea of what?
No.
Okay. The most rewarding part of guiding women through sexual healing is
Seeing them have breakthroughs.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then my most transformative sensual experience was you just going through like loads of different experiences.
Oh yeah, because I've left out a whole chapter of all this like mad times when I went to when I studied with International School of Temple Arts, which is like this spiritual shamanic sexual like process initiation. The most transformative. Yeah, I think probably like my level 1 in International School of Temple Arts, which is cheating a bit because that was a whole week.
Okay.
It's a whole week process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I say that tentatively because there's been a lot of controversy and allegations with that school, but my level 1 with that, like, I would say that, yeah, it's a whole chapter. It's a whole other podcast that we haven't done.
What, you need to come back then.
Yeah, but that was, particularly there was an emotional release practice that we did, ritual, that really awakened something in me.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we need to talk about that on another one. And the last 3 are just random questions. So, what is one daily ritual that you can't live without?
Journaling.
Yeah. Okay. What is one unexpected thing that brings you joy?
Grooming my boyfriend and my dog in ways that they don't enjoy.
Oh no!
Like plucking random hairs out, or like
yeah.
I love it.
I love that. Okay, and the last one is, I ask everyone this, is what 3 things do you love about yourself?
Oh, I love my bum.
Good.
I have to have a good bum. I love how compassionate I am, and I love my resilience. I think I can get through some hard shit.
Amazing.
And bounce back.
Amazing. So that is it. I
Yeah.
definitely think you need to come back because there are just so
to.
many things that we haven't spoken about. But
If you want a resident sex columnist or like guest.
Yeah, exactly. We need that.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Oh, I really did. It was nice to get back in the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers.
And guys, don't forget, follow Amy. Everything's in the caption. And follow, subscribe, comment, leave us a review, do all the things to help us get the podcast out there. We really appreciate you. And I will see you next week. Bye. Okay, so that's it for this week's episode of the Woman Up podcast. All the links and resources we mentioned in the episode will be in the description, no matter where you're listening or watching from. If you're listening or watching this on a podcast platform such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review and follow the channel. You have no idea how much this helps to push out the podcast to a wider audience. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button for the same reason and feel free to leave a comment, ask a question, or make suggestions. It really means the world to us, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.